Hello and welcome to Ascend in Action, the podcast that celebrates the future of women in staffing and consulting, brought to you by Amoria Group. In this podcast, we'll be talking and tackling some of the key topics when it comes to women in staffing and consulting, from why we need more women and what we bring to the industry, to our role in tackling gender bias and empowering and supporting each other. Presented by the Progressing Lives Everywhere podcast, these conversations are designed to inspire, engage, and show how together we can fulfill our potential and progress our lives.
Welcome to the Ascend in Action podcast series, part of the Progressing Lives Everywhere podcast, brought to you by the Amoria Group. I'm Daisy McVey, Talent Attraction Specialist in our Manchester office, and today I'll be speaking with Natasha Crump, who is our Chief People and ESG Officer in the Amoria Group. We'll be discussing the gender equality within the recruitment and consulting industries, and today we'll ask questions such as, do women still face barriers once established? Do we get equal opportunities to men? And also as well, are there still negative cultural aspects? Let's find out. Hi, Natasha. Thank you for joining me today on our Ascend into Action podcast. I know this is a topic that you're super passionate about, so I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights and then sharing them with everyone else as well.
Thanks, Daisy. I'm delighted to be here. And yeah, your biggest challenge is going to be stopping me talking too much, I think.
But yeah, that leads on to our first question. So, do women continue to face barriers to progression in the industry once they've established themselves? And if so, what are they and what can we do about them?
Yeah, so I think sadly, the answer is yes. It's not a challenge that's unique to recruitment, but I don't think we can shy away from what the stats show us. And the stats do actually show that something is stopping women progressing in our industry, just like it is across most industries, including the STEM sectors that we work in and recruit for ourselves. The latest data I looked at showed that less than 20% of recruitment companies are led by women, and SAA stats showed that just 33% of board seats are occupied by women in our industry, despite the fact that women represent 40 to 60% on average of total workforce within companies within our industry. So there's a gap between the number of women in our industry and the number of women in leadership. So there is something that's stopping women progressing. And I think what we need to do is get underneath that and understand why. The Global Gender Gap report last year showed that leadership hiring within our industry had dropped to just 32%. So the problem's getting to get worse before it gets better. So we do need to do something about it.
Perfect. And I definitely think there's a lot of different barriers to helping women progress. For example, things like working hours that are too long if they have a family, lack of flexibility. Is there anything else that you can think of that would really act as that barrier to them?
So I think some of the barriers are maybe perceived barriers rather than real barriers. So we still battle within our industry against this perception of recruitment and management consulting and staffing generally being this boys club, this men's club culture. And in some companies that is the case, but the perception of that is that it's far more prevalent. And I think in reality it is within our industry. There's been a lot of work done by a lot of great companies, ours included, but we're not alone, to actually address the issues that we're an issue 10, 20 years ago within the industry. You can't deny recruitment and staffing generally have been a kind of male-dominated industry, and there has been some toxic behaviour and culture. But that's something that's been really addressed by the industry at large. Not everybody, I can't say it's completely weeded out, but I think that the perception is perhaps worse than the reality, certainly within a lot of companies. And I'm guessing from your experience anyway, in talent attraction, that's something you'll have heard from women, because it can really put women off from great candidates who'd be really, really successful, can actually put them off from actually even considering working within our industry, right?
Yeah, definitely. From a CA perspective, I definitely do get people that I speak to, women that I speak to, that do have that perception that recruitment is completely just, an old boys club, really toxic environment, very negatively competitive. However, maybe that is quite outdated. I know before I worked in the Amoria Group, I hadn't really come across many sort of women in senior leadership positions. So it's been really refreshing working here and seeing that myself, and also as well seeing the action that we take towards towards gender balance within the industry, but I do think that perception could be outdated. But I do know there are a lot of businesses out there that, you know, it is purely just men in the business and they don't have anything in place to attract or retain or progress women. So yeah, definitely from a TA perspective, it is something that I do hear a lot, but I do think that there's been a massive shift towards, you know, change within that, especially here.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a change of attitude. I think that potentially, though, there's more that needs to be done practically. So the last data I saw, for example, on what companies in our industry do in terms of family-friendly and women-friendly policies, for example, only a quarter of recruitment and staffing and management consulting businesses actually offer enhanced maternity leave and maternity policy kind of entitlements. That's the kind of thing that's going to really make a difference to women. I think there's been a massive shift now. I think it's well over 80% of companies generally inside and outside our industry offer some form of flexible working. You know, that was one of the positive things that came out of the pandemic. But what we haven't done is seen a really significant shift in other policies and processes and working practices that are going to shift the dial significantly. And, you know, I'm proud that we offer enhanced maternity and paternity pay and leave to our employees. We do that under a general parental leave, family forming policy, because for us it's about recognising different forms of family as well, you know, being actually as inclusive as possible in terms of the benefits that we offer in that area. But it's more than just looking at women in terms of families. It's also thinking about the different stages and different challenges that women in work face, and, you know, things like actually having open, transparent menopause policies, for example, something that we just introduced within our business, and support for women going through menopause, because actually that age group going through menopause is at the age often when you most likely be stepping up into, or for a lot of women will be stepping up into that board level kind of role. And actually what across all industries is happening is too many women are leaving because they can't cope with or don't get the support that they need to work through menopause. So we need to be catching up as an industry and just as society at large with how do we support women at different stages of their lives and career to make sure that women can stay in work, can progress successfully, and can thrive and not do it in a way that undermines their well-being long term. So those are the kind of things I'm really proud that we're looking at. And, you know, we're not perfect. We've still got things that we need to be working on and improving ourselves. But actually just having that open dialogue, and that's something I love about where we work, is, you know, we've got absolute buy-in from our founders, from our CEO, from the wider board, to making the changes that need to be made. You know, things like understanding things about, you know, women and their time of the month, and actually having processes in place to support women, whether it's, you know, whether it's through families, whether it's through time of the month, whether it's through menopause, and not being afraid or embarrassed to have these kind of conversations as well. And that, you know, that to me is really refreshing. And it's been great to see that shift in culture and just appetite to be able to have those open discussions, and actually for women to be coming to us with ideas and feeling really empowered to do that. And I think Ascend, our internal program's had a lot to do with that, because it's given women that opportunity to talk safely and with psychological safety, which is really important, about what's going to make a difference and how do we keep them in our business. And it's meant we've kept some brilliant people who've advocated for and led great changes within our business. That's something I'm really proud of.
So for anyone that doesn't know what Ascend is, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, of course. So Ascend is an internal programme within our business that myself and one of our sales directors, Amy Steele, co-founded in 2020. And our objective at the time was very clear, and it hasn't changed. Ascend is designed to attract, retain, progress and empower more women within our business. And we do that through a number of different initiatives and programs. So we have Ascend Buddying, we run Ascend training sessions, we have Ascend group-wide webinars for not just women, but for everyone in our business, because a big part of what we've tried to drive with the Ascend program is about actually raising awareness, regardless of gender, about the different challenges that can come with different genders, and actually the importance of advocacy and allyship as well. And we've seen some really stark change in attitudes and behaviours as well that's really helped to support what we're trying to do in a women-to-women network-based program like Ascend, but actually engaging the whole business. And the reason it's been successful is the kind of the engagement that's come from women in our business. And we now actually have an Ascend steering committee with women representing each of our offices. So it started off as me and Amy kind of running things on a gut feel basis. And now we have, some really great women right across our business who are all influencing the Ascend agenda, not just from a group-wide perspective, but then running things locally within their own offices. And I absolutely love that, because that's really, that is that empowerment piece. Particularly as we've seen more women progress into management and senior leadership positions. It's been fantastic. The last webinar that we did internally, I did no prep for. I turned up on the day and did a brief intro, and it was wonderful. Amy and I were literally messaging ourselves because it was just delightful to sit back and learn from other women who'd led this whole program themselves. And it was just, it was a real pinch myself moment. I have a few of those off the back of Ascend, but that was probably my proudest moment. And I think Amy would probably agree with that as well. But it fundamentally works though, because we have that buy-in from the top within our business, and then that ripples down through every layer. And that's essential, because the worst thing that I think, one of the worst mistakes companies can make is claiming to want to improve their gender balance, but actually not being prepared to put the work in. And I think that's worse than doing nothing at all, because you're setting unrealistic expectations. You're bringing people in on a false promise, and I don't think that's right.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you think that we shape and shift culture or call out negative or toxic behaviours in order to make a more positive change?
Okay, so fundamentally, we are a very, very value-based business here at Amoria Group, more so than any other business I've ever worked for in any industry I've worked for. Our professed values are integral to our business. They're something that everyone in our business knows and understands, and they are a set of standards that we hold ourselves and each other accountable to. You'll have seen this yourself with the sessions that we have. We have training sessions around our standards. All of our managers have training around bias, around inclusive hiring practices, around ED&I, about all sorts of different ways that we encourage and empower our leaders to be confident in this space, to understand. We offer all sorts of different training and coaching, both some of it's mandatory to our management team, some of it's, what they particularly look for, want and need. And we have that luxury within our business because we're so focused and engaged and invest so much in not just learning and development, but also kind of like mindset mastery, that we've got highly engaged people and leaders who understand our values and want to invest in themselves and want to be better and want to create an environment that is inclusive. And the bottom line is as well, it's great to have culture and value sessions. It's great that members of the board will regularly stand up and talk to all of our teams openly about what we expect, about standards and when we're falling short of them. But we're also prepared as business to take brave decisions and make bold actions, because ultimately in our business, if you're not aligned with our values and you don't live out our values, you're not right for us and we are absolutely not right for you. And we've made some very, very brave decisions, some really big decisions. We've parted ways with people who just absolutely have not aligned themselves with our values. And, going back to what I said earlier, unless you're really, really prepared to take the action needed to make an inclusive culture where women and all, women we're talking about today, but where everybody feels welcome and everybody feels empowered to be their best self, to thrive and succeed. If you're not prepared to put in the action, then don't be talking about it. And actually some of that comes down to fundamentally being prepared to say, no, you're not right for us. And if you don't support how we want our culture to be, then you need to go and find yourself somewhere else to work, because we're not going to be the right place for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there definitely is, massive evidence towards the fact that we are a very values-driven business. And I think a lot of the time businesses may have values purely as a tick box exercise, whereas with us, we celebrate people who embody the values weekly, monthly, yearly. So I definitely think that helps towards making a more positive change and being so values driven.
Just to come back on that as well, I think just to be really clear, obviously I've talked about, we won't tolerate lack of compliance with our standards. We won't tolerate toxic behaviour within our business. But I think what's essential as well is that, it's really important that companies actually invest in not just setting the standards, communicating the standards, but invest in training and development and mindset mastery that is around helping people to understand how to be a great and inclusive colleague, a great inclusive manager. What is allyship? What does that really mean? How does that show up in the workplace? And I think, there is a responsibility for companies to actually help employees to understand what it is that we're aiming for and how they can be empowered to contribute positively to that. So it's not just kind of about calling out the poor behaviours, it's about elevating really great role models and actually helping people as well, because that mindset shift can happen. I've seen it happen. I've seen such a great shift in some people, just seeing that penny drop in terms of, I get it now, understand why this is important, I want to be part of the solution. That's exciting. That's what we need to be looking at.
So, as mentioned, in my experience before working within the Amoria Group, I've never really come across many women in previous companies in senior leadership roles. And it's always made me wonder, are we given the same impactful opportunities or the same access to it, or, even access to senior leaders?
I suppose I need to answer this in two parts. So for us here in Amoria Group, I can say with absolute certainty, yes. We absolutely are a meritocracy. I believe that we have the processes in place to support women to progress successfully. I think there's still more work for us to do in that area, but I think, the investment that we've made and the progress that we've made is really showing up now in terms of how women are progressing through our business. Group-wide, over 40% of management and leadership roles are occupied by women within our business, which is great. That said, I'm only one of 2 women at board level, and that's not good enough. I'd love to be surrounded by more women on the board. However, as I've already said, I am surrounded by a board that's absolutely, genuinely committed to progressing more women within our business into senior roles. We want to see more women progressing to sales director, sales MD level. That's really been the focus area, because we do have actually almost 70% of our senior leaders within our support functions within group services are women. We want to start seeing more women coming up through the ranks within the sales teams as well, and we are starting to see that flushing through. So over half of our new hires now are women. You're doing a great job in terms of our employer brand and talent attraction within the talent attraction teams. But you're selling a reality, which, going back to our conversation before, is essential. So we're talking to women about what we offer, which is allowing us to attract more great candidates in. They're then realising that we do what we say on the tin, which is vital. We're not just selling in a dream that's not a reality. And so more women are staying and more women are progressing in our business. And it's fantastic to see that pipeline coming through. And obviously we have, we invest in fast track support for high potential women in our business. Some of that is one-to-one mentoring with internal senior leaders within our business. Some of it is with externals, depending on the women, depending on the scenario, situation, depending on what's best for them. So we're doing as much as I think as we can in terms of ensuring that when we get great women into our business, they have a really great experience. We've got the policies and processes in place to support them. The benefits are actually suited and relevant to them. We're supporting them through their different challenges and experiences in life. And we're making sure that they have equity of opportunity to progress in our business. And that's absolutely essential. Now, do I think that outside of Amoria Group, everyone's at that level? When I look around industry events and see the proportion of women to men, probably not. But what I would say is the conversation in those kind of industry events is really, really shifted and is starting very much more to be focused around how can we learn from each other? How do we share best practice? How can we all get better at getting more women into our industry and keeping them in our industry and progressing them? So it's slow steps. We're not where we need to be, but I do genuinely believe we're moving in the right direction.
And with so many questions around gender equality within recruitment and consulting industries, do you believe that there is pay equity within these industries?
So sadly, there's not enough data for us to be absolutely sure. We're in an industry which claims to be a meritocracy, which by definition means that theoretically, yes, there should be pay equity. But the last data that I saw on this, and I've thrown a few stats out there today, so apologies, but data is essential when you're talking about anything related to ED&I, because you need to look at the data to understand whether you're making progress. And the last SIA report last year in 2023 showed that only 50% of companies in our industry are actually reporting on gender pay, pay gap reporting. We're one of that 50%. I'm really proud that we are. That's something that we've been focused on for a few years now. And we look at it in far more detail than we need to. Actually, legally, we don't need to be reporting on gender pay gap, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. And it's a really important way of holding yourself accountable and making sure that actually there is pay equity within your business, because it's too easy to assume we're a sales business, therefore there's pay equity. We need to be looking at the data to make sure that that is actually the reality. I'm proud to say that we are a company that provides pay equity, and that whichever level you're in within our business, you're on the same level of pay as anyone else, regardless of gender. I'd like to see more legislative requirement for everybody to be reporting on this. It's not a hard thing to do. It's not hard analysis to do. You've got your pay data there anyway. I would encourage any business, regardless of industry, to be looking at and reporting on gender pay reporting and gender pay gaps within their business, because that's how we'll know if we're really moving the dial, if we're really providing an equitable place for women, because it shows whether all of the activity is actually having the impact it should have. Because when you do look at the data that is out there, outside of our industry, just at large, women don't have gender pay parity, and that's not acceptable. So I'm proud that we do it. I'm proud that we are transparent about our gender pay gap reporting. I would like to see that as a requirement for everybody, and I'd like to see people committing to providing that data with or without legislative requirement.
And, holding yourself accountable with things like this is great, but the companies out there that aren't holding themselves accountable and aren't providing this data, it makes you wonder, does the glass ceiling still exist within, not just this industry, but every other industry?
I think it really depends where you're working. I would like to think that within Amoria Group, nobody experiences a glass ceiling, regardless of gender. I can't guarantee it, and nobody can, because I can't speak to anyone else's experience. What I can say is that if I was shown any evidence, and I talk here on behalf of myself and the wider board, if we were given any evidence to the contrary, we would absolutely take action straight away. So I would like to hope that nobody in my business experiences the glass ceiling. I think that why I'm being a bit cagey is because there can sometimes be barriers to women that as a company you're not aware of, or that are there sort of subconsciously, barriers that you don't believe are in place but they're holding women back. I hope that through the initiatives that we have, the opportunities that we provide women to give feedback, to input into shaping our business, shaping our culture, shaping our policies and processes, would help make sure that we are aware of anything like that, and that we've been able to address those issues and barriers where we've known about them. But I think it's really important for companies to not assume that they've got the answers, to not assume that they know everything. You have to continue to speak to your employees. You have to continue to find out what is holding people back, whether that's from a gender perspective or any other kind of diversity demographic perspective. Really, really important not to be so assumptive and arrogant that you think you know all the answers. Yeah. So, is there a glass ceiling? Certainly within certain companies will exist, even if their board think it doesn't. And I think, that's something that we all have to be, anyone in a senior leadership position has to be really aware of and wary of, assuming that just because they believe that they're committed to equality just because they believe that they offer, great opportunities and lots of processes and policies and everything else, that's enough and they can carry on with their day. Absolutely not. You've got to continue to look under the bonnet and continue to be open to the fact that the possibility that there might be an unknown or unseen, unidentified glass ceiling somewhere within your business. That's how you smash the glass ceiling, because that's about then empowering people to keep telling you what's stopping them, and then you take action and together you smash it. And to me, that comes back to why empowering women is an important part of what our objective with Ascend, because we can't attract, retain, progress women sufficiently and sustainably without empowering them so that they're empowered to tell us what's stopping them from joining us, what's stopping them from staying with us, what's stopping them from progressing with us. If we can keep that conversation going, we can keep smashing the next glass ceiling that we recognise and we identify. So I think, very long answer to your question, sorry about that, but I don't think it's an easy answer, because I think that every woman's experience will be different as well.
Yeah.
And that's why we've got to keep this conversation going, and absolutely don't assume that the glass ceiling doesn't exist, because just because it doesn't exist for me doesn't mean it doesn't exist for the next woman, even in the same business, even in the same team. It's really important to be open to that.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's experience is different, and it's great as a business to recognise that. So what's the most positive change you've seen in terms of progression towards gender balance and equity within the recruitment consulting industries?
Okay, yeah, good question to end on. Let's end on a positive then. I think for me, the biggest change has been the willingness and the proactivity to have conversations about this. There's a lot more honesty in those conversations. There's a lot more willingness between companies across our industry to come together proactively, to share best practice, to learn from each other. I'm seeing an openness to share mistakes as well, because we all make mistakes in this space, and it's really important to be able to talk about those mistakes and talk about how to avoid making those mistakes again. That safety of conversation is really essential. So I think for me, it's about that conversation. It's about the commitment that's behind that conversation again. Now, I get, I'm not saying that every company within our industry is committed to change. Some of them can care less. But the shift generally within the industry has been towards open, honest, collaborative conversations with a real commitment behind it, and that's refreshing, and it's been really good to see. It needs to be more, and that commitment, I would like to see more companies with initiatives like Ascend within their business, taking real action, not just talking, not just committing, but actually putting that into action. That's the next bit, but we've got the conversation, we've got the commitment, there's plenty of action, just more of action.
Well, that's all the questions that we have for today. It's been great speaking with you, Natasha, and thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. And yeah, it was great having you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Daisy. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Well, if you're looking to start a career within recruitment or consultancy, be sure to check out amoriabond.com. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to Ascend in Action, brought to you by Amoria Group. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a review. Every time you do, it helps others to find the show. Amoria Group are committed to walking the talk, and through our recruitment brand, Amoria Bond, and consultancy, Coalesce Management Consulting, we work hard to create a positive and inclusive environment for everyone. For further details on Amoria Group and how we are progressing lives everywhere, head over to amoriagroup.com. See you next time.